Ladies and gents, welcome back to the Pop Culture Podcast. Today I'm joined by a friend of mine by the name of Kade Fallins. If you've been listening for a little while now, you would have heard him in the very early stages of the life of this podcast. Kade's a breathwork coach, he is a resilience coach, and he's just fascinated in the world of health and wellbeing. So today I wanted to get him on because I'm fascinated by all of those things as well, and especially interested in the element of breath work. It's taken a bit more of the imagination of the public over the last couple of years. I've certainly become more aware of it. So I wanted to find out a little more about what the buzz is. Cade's got a brilliant, relaxed way of sharing his ideas in a real, he just makes it practical. He puts it out there simply. So even when the science can get a little bit confusing, he breaks it down nicely. It was a really, really good conversation. Thoroughly enjoyed talking with him, and I hope you do as well. So let me handball this to you, a conversation with myself and Kade Fallins. Dude, what's the painting you got behind you? That looks nice.
Yeah, man, it's cool. It's a Carl Sagan quote. Probably can't read it in backwards, but it says, "It pays to keep an open mind, but not so open your brain falls out." Just a bit funny.
That's good, nice, man.
Yeah.
That's good. Dude, I've been...
the neon of it.
Say that again?
I just love the neon.
Looks sweet. I was glad you turned your camera slightly to, is it your right or left? Because a little bit of pink in the background, it looks good. That's what I love about these things. We were just talking before I hit record. It's interesting trying to set up podcasts when you're away from each other. And one of the things that I'm taking a bit of pride in is the background. I'm just trying to nail it. I'm trying to figure out how to make it look a little bit pretty. And especially if you spend a bit of time on here, it's nice to deck it. And I'm such when it comes to people's podcasts, or when it just comes to people's studios or whatever it is that they're doing online, I'm so judgmental of studios and stuff. And I've got a love for it. I've got this little creative thing that comes out of me where I'm like, I see what they're doing there. How have they structured their lighting a little bit? So I've got some appreciation for your little artwork behind there, brother. It looks good.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I'm the same, mate. And it's such an unfair judgment. You can have a world-class thought leader and they're just in their home office with a white background and you're just sitting there and you're like, come on, man. And it's the quality of the audio is really loose. It's oh, I want more.
Yeah.
A production.
Yeah, dude. It's funny. I used to think that with Jordan Peterson. And it's weird though, isn't it? Because the real priority is obviously the quality of the content that's coming out. And you can sit through anything if what they're talking about is decent. There's a guy I like called Seth Godin. He's like a marketer from the United States. And I feel like I like him less at the moment because I wrote him a message to invite him on my podcast a while ago. And I said, because I messaged him in 2017. He goes, hey, message me back when you've done 80 episodes of your podcast. And I knew what he was doing because most people wouldn't do 80 episodes of a podcast. So he was saying no in a really nice way. And he bloody got me because I stopped doing that podcast when me and Powley moved away from each other. And I got to about 50 episodes. So I thought, I'll message him the other day because this is actually, I think this is episode 80 or 81. And I messaged him the other day going, dude, messaged you in 2017. Would love to have you on episode 80. And he wrote back, I won't be able to do it, but thanks. And I was like, mate, at least the very minimum you could do, surely, you say, hi, Tyson, thanks for reaching out. And it was just like a slap in the face. But I think he's got that kind of character where he's just a straight shooter. You're not going to guess what he's thinking. So I kind of respect it as well. But he talks about this idea that so many of us are so obsessed with the idea of marketing, with social media being our key. We'll focus so much on trying to build a following there, and we'll build a following based on whatever it is that we can in so many instances. That's why you'll see so many, cleavage shots of your 16-year-old sister just scrolling through Instagram because people are just keen to get people to follow them. And as a result, we forget about the quality of the product we produce rather than, we focus too much on just getting the followers than the quality of the product. And Jordan Peterson, man, he's a classic example of that. When he started his podcast, he was recording through his computer speakers. It was echoey. There was just shit everywhere in his background. And I'm like, you know what, though? I'm going to let you off the hook because what you're saying is changing my life. It is interesting. But then at the same time, now he's gone over to the Daily Wire. I don't know if you know those guys, sort of that conservative media company. Ben Shapiro's platform, I guess you call it. And dude, everything's just gone to full blown professional. So now we're getting the double hit of Jordan Peterson at his best, and also looking real good while he's doing it.
Yeah. There's something beautiful about that rawness, though, as we flip on the other pole of what we said before. You know that there's no one in their ears saying, this is what you have to say. There's no, like, producer being like, hey, just watch that topic, don't talk about this or that, when they're just like sitting in their garage, just ghetto style.
It's so freeing, man. It's like the beauty of a bloke like Elon Musk taking over a platform like Twitter, working for Shapiro, because all of a sudden the things you're allowed to say without being banned have been well and truly expanded, which is
Yeah.
nice, which is really nice. I had a video taken down off YouTube a while ago like a year ago, because I think I was joking about the 2016 election. I was just mucking around, having fun, and I don't know anything. I didn't know what I was talking about. I was just riffing, and I was taking the piss out of Joe Biden and just saying, "Oh, clearly been rigged." Blah blah blah. I bet that gets taken down just because I said that, and completely taking the piss. And I got a message from the YouTube algorithm to say, "Oh, we've removed this because of false information." And I was like, "No, it was." Like, can you listen to it? Because I was taking the piss. I was just like, I think I said I don't know what I'm talking about, and
Mate,
they
you're
said,
a
"Oh,
comedian. You guys normally have a license to push into contentious topics.
well, it's weird, man. You think that, and I think that's why there's alternatives opening up to platforms like YouTube, because there's a lot of people who I notice it myself sometimes when you're trying to post content on a platform like that, you self edit. And that's one thing that I refuse to do in live stand up. Like, one thing I'll, if it's a really contentious topic, I'll try and do it in a way that's funny and not just be a prick, just so I can get up there and say my opinions. But yeah, there's a real difference between that live comedy and the massive media, because there's people behind the keyboards on their side who are well and truly, I don't know if you call it a power trip, but there's something going on where they're really limiting what you're allowed to say in some respects. And even more than that, like, I don't know if it's just taking down podcasts, which are the main problems, but even I'm sure there's a massive capacity they have to just edit an algorithm so that your video doesn't reach many people or whatever. It's a really strange thing, because I love a comedian
Yeah.
called Tim Dillon. He's got like 40,000 people subscribed to him on Patreon, and you look at his YouTube subscription and people love him. And dude, it's not that high. And I know it's because he's kind of, people throw him in conspiracy theory land, and he says stuff you're just not supposed to say. And he says stuff that in woke world just doesn't fly. So I guess when the platform is woke world central, it's it's really going to limit your reach. But it's kind of frustrating. It's funny like that, dude. Like, I don't know what it's like in Sydney, but Melbourne especially. I feel like the place, especially comedy rooms down here, a lot of them are run by just woke muppets a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Woke but not awake.
That's the thing. That's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, it's funny how you can quickly label yourself woke, and anyone else with half a clue like yourself can look in and go, "Hang on a second, I'm not convinced you really know anything." That's the frustrating thing. Elon Musk came out. Have you been following that closely at all, or have you been looking at that at all?
Not really. Not really.
Because you're a
Yeah.
smart man and you got better things to do with your time. I get so caught up in the commentary of it. I've been reading the Twitter files a little bit and just seeing how the former owners of Twitter handled the Hunter Biden stuff when it was the lead up to the election, and what was being allowed to be shared and what wasn't.
Okay, yeah.
And he's pretty much just taken the lid off what was going on there, going, "Yeah, look, there was some," and he's unpacked the emails and stuff to show it, but there was some pretty legit tampering taking place with information that was being allowed to be shared via Twitter, and people's accounts being suspended for sharing stuff that they were pretty confident was true. So it's nice to see like a little bit of a swing back to that woke world on a platform like Twitter with a bloke like him, because it just gives you hope for what might take place. Because surely, I don't know, it's weird. I'm a pretty loose unit when it comes to what I talk about, and even sometimes I bite my tongue because I'm like, oh, I don't want to rub this person up the wrong way or whatever.
Yeah.
But I know there's a lot of people who've got plenty to say but don't, because they just don't want to be judged or criticized or whatever else it is for having an honest opinion.
I don't know how far you want to go on this podcast because I'm biting my tongue.
Dude, go for it. Go for it.
I don't know much, mate. I'm just a smart monkey, but like I'm definitely aware that my bias is hypercritical of people now. I don't trust anyone but myself, really, and good humans like yourself. But anyone in the public eye, like Elon, I'm just so skeptical because people can do great things for a while for a purpose with an agenda, and I've gone from like being ultra, give me every rabbit hole and I'll believe it. Like 10 years ago, I was just eating up everything to now I just block out everything that distracts me from what I'm doing and my center and what I can sort of create in the world. And I just look at macro conceptually, like what Elon does. And it's like, kind of like he's driving the car straight towards the cliff that I don't want to go over, but he's doing like good things on the way. And I'll frame again, like I know nothing, but I'm just I'm skeptical because like the whole concept of controlled opposition, right? Like they win you over with 80% of the truth 80% of the time, and then push comes to shove, and suddenly they've got everyone that they wanted on their team, and then they can make the divergence, change the train tracks.
Dude, I had this conversation for the first time with a mate of mine the other day, and we were talking about Joe Rogan, and he goes, "Oh, I've figured out his controlled opposition." I go, "Wait, what? What are we talking about? Controlled opposition?" Because it's a strange concept, and I was really I don't know. Maybe I'm still superstitious. Maybe I'm still a little bit skeptical of the idea of controlled opposition. Well, it's not that I'd be skeptical of the idea. It's just that I think I was skeptical that my mate Joe was a part of it. But I don't really understand what. Do you want to unpack it a bit, man? Like, give me the explanation because I genuinely don't. My first introduction to this idea was 3 weeks ago, maybe. And when my mate finished talking about it, I was like, okay, he's crazy, essentially. He's not, but it was because I just didn't understand where he was coming from.
Yeah, it's definitely a deep part of the rabbit hole in terms of like the concept of controlled agendas. And once again, to frame it, like I'm not well versed in this stuff. I've looked at it a long time ago, and I've just let go of it all. So, in my opinion, like how I see the concept of controlled opposition as a hypothetical concept is that there would be people, if there is a controlling group that, call it government or call it something else, that want to steer societal perceptions around different topics, say climate change, AI, whatever else, that people who, I don't know how it works, like, either people are groomed into it or they at some point are sort of could be blackmailed into it or just rewarded into having accountability to those powers above them in order to so there you go, okay, well, either they're blackmailed into it or they got money. And this is all just my hypothetical, this is what my brain goes. It's like if I was, then I'd be sitting here and I'd be talking to you, and I know there's a couple of things I can't say, but otherwise go free reign so that the audience gets to like me because I tell them the truth and I wake them up to things. So they go, oh, I trust him. I never heard of this concept of controlled opposition before. That resonates. I'm into him. Yeah, I see that he's sharing truth, things that I didn't know about. And then, a year down the line or something, I'm going like, yeah, guys, everyone just get like the microchip in the brain. It'll be great. Like, let's bring on the droids. That concept being a really intelligent way to keep control of groups of thinkers that you would otherwise not be able to rein in.
Mm. So building trust with a person with a particular idea through them sharing ideas that really resonate, and then gradually they'll just slip out an idea which is a little more extreme that you embrace just as a result of the fact that you trust them.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think I understood that. I think that was what I left this conversation with my mate Joash. Great, you'd get on with Joash like a house on fire, man. I certainly do. Yeah, because he introduces me to stuff like this. it's, I think the thing I struggle with these ideas, and I struggle with them less just because I reckon the last couple of years I think my eyes have been open to how much manipulation can take place with really good people really, really quickly. Like throughout this whole
Mm.
COVID thing, it was mind blowing to me how quickly we jumped on board this idea that the vaccine was going to be the answer to everyone, when at the time, and like Pfizer now tells you this, there was no evidence that it was ever going to work. It was purely um, I don't know what you call it, but it was, we were sold the idea that this was 100% legitimate. It was 100% worked out. You can trust the experts and do this, and things will work out well. And now, as we go along, you start to gradually hear little bits of information. You gradually see the results, and you can see, hey, COVID's still around, and it still spreads, and people still get it. And you go, hang on, like how much can we trust you guys? Because I vaccinated my first kid mostly as a result of the information that you were telling me, and now you've been so far off the mark with this one, and I'm still being told to trust you, not only with this one but with everything else. And I can see from that perspective how a person in a position, a person who's built trust with a particular audience could be used as almost like a mouthpiece to make sure you get them on board. It's been really mind blowing to me. And I think when you said before that you've gradually sort of started to trust people less and less and just focus more on what it is that you're trying to create, I understand that idea, because I say unfortunately for me, unfortunately I feel the same in many respects. People that I used to look up to with respect and admiration, I now look at with like a lot of skepticism, just based on the way they handled themselves with this one issue over the last couple of years.
Mm. Yeah. I have a mate I went to high school with who plays for one of the AFL clubs down south, and it's just a prime example. It's just a guy that has a bunch of followers, and he's sitting there and he's taking a video and he's like, "Hey guys, like go and get your booster, like protect your family, protect the community, blah blah blah." And he's obviously just paid to do that. It's just marketing. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's no different to just selling a product, being like, "Hey, buy this water bottle. It's really good. Like it'll help your family keep hydrated and really healthy." It's no different, but it's something which it's contentious for another usage of the word, because the evidence isn't there, the science isn't there, and it's all coming through. You just got to keep looking in the right direction, right? It's not on the mainstream news, but all of the evidence is out there now. It's plain and simple because the vaccine companies are saying it. But for me, what like sort of I've been sitting with is we don't know much, and we don't know what we don't know. So what I am developing is listening to my body and what my body tells me about someone or something. So saying, "Hey, Joe Rogan, like, how does he feel?" And just listening to what that response is in the body. So someone comes in and just listening to how your nervous system approach, like talking towards breath work, like you're neurocepting constantly. Your nervous system is basically checking out everyone, going, "Hey, is Tyson safe to connect with, or is he a bit in like this mode, which would be in parasympathetic because you're on the run? If you're in a freeze state, you're a red light. If you're in parasympathetic, like you're chatting now, you're not thinking about past, present, or past or future. You're just present with me. We're connected. Then you're green light." So I've been working on that, like sort of honing in on that skill, and to then flip back to the whole like concept of CO, like controlled opposition. There's also a huge chance that there's like and this is conspiracy fucking circus, right? Like this is why I've stopped, bro, because this is where my head goes. I'm like, okay, how's this? I'll probably lose everyone now. How's the concept of like, there's someone in controlled opposition, and I don't like going towards like good and bad, because it's probably just human nature. It could just be greed, It could just be that these like, and you talk about the vaccine, and they said this at the start. They said it would stop transmission, and now they say no. It actually, we never tested it to stop transmission. But the whole marketing ploy was to protect each other. So it was, if you don't get vaccinated, you're being bad and harming the rest of the people. So you're a bad citizen. So the concept of like, you go to the tobacco companies, back in the day, We could just be ignorant. We could just be idiots and just going, hey, yeah, this is good. Oh, whoops, we made a mistake. You know, human error is a fundamental piece of life. But what if someone like Joe Rogan's like been like controlled opposition, you know, he's like, yeah, cool, Spotify overlords, you know, I'll do what you say. But really, inside, he stayed sovereign. And he's like, you'll never control me, you know, but he said he will, you know, so it's like a double flip.
Yeah.
That's just where my brain goes. So that's why I say, I don't know. I frame this whole thing like I'm just listening to my body, doing what I can, because if I focus on all of these things and people, my energy and my life force is going that way. You know, talk about anything like, you know, talk about porn. Not, what is it, 95% of men have watched porn in the last like 2 weeks or something. You know, most of them it's like daily. That life force, which your sexual energy is your life force energy, that's going straight to some like other place. You know, that's your ability to create is this sexual energy. So, you know, taking that on another little tangent, but I'm giving myself away to other people when I'm thinking about them all the time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just focusing on me, bro, and doing what I can. But I had something else to mention when you're talking about, was it Ben Shapiro? No,
Yeah, I mentioned that Jordan Peterson went and worked for Ben Shapiro's company.
no, you're talking about the guy that you reached out for the podcast.
Oh, Seth Godin.
Seth Godin, yeah. So I have it's talking like, you know, little fish trying to, you know, get into the pond with big fish. I'm a very small fish, and I'm going to LA in a week. I think I leave in a week today. And so I message Aubrey Marcus. I'm like, let's have a let's throw a bait out, you know. I was like, hey mate, and then, I've commented on his like a few of his things or stories over the years. I've been listening to him for a very long time and getting his emails since before I even knew that it was. I thought it was a girl. I was just getting his email. I signed up to some email chain. I get these emails every now and again, and I'm like, this chick's really cool. She like writes really well, and then it comes through, and then he develops. I think he was doing On It at the time, and then it came through the podcast. I'm like, oh, this guy's a king. And so yeah, over the years, he's replied to a few of my story replies and stuff. He's very interactive on his Instagram. He's very good. But I sent him a message being like, just putting it out there. I'm in LA. Would love to meet up and hang out for like a coffee or something if you can. You know, I don't know where you are. I know you don't live in LA. I was like, because we're looking at opening a Breathwork studio in Sydney sometime next year with 2 other people. And we've started running events and doing a bit of a festival circuit. And it's all going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And I also really like the fit for service concept and model. And I would love to create something very similar here where you get a tribe of people together, elevating together, holding each other accountable, getting deep connection. That's why I do all this work, mate. Like for me, the undercurrent of getting people in breathwork workshops and getting people to do ice baths is connection. And the big piece that I've been communicating now is, so we want to feel more connection with the outside world, right? All of us do. And the outside world's very busy, but we want to feel more connected with the outside world. Well, before we can connect with the outside world authentically, we need to connect with ourselves, because you can't give what you don't have. So you have connection with yourself first, and then you can connect with the world. This tree, this table, this brother. But before those 2 things to happen, what we need is safety. Back to that neuroception. You want your nervous system to be able to down-regulate, not get triggered, you know? So that's the piece that I've been sort of the model that's underneath my workshops now and my retreats is creating a sense of safety. And that comes from me, like doing my work and staying in integrity and, you know, living the life that I do. Is I'm just fully like stepping more and more into like, how can I be of the best service to my community? And so I try and live, you know, as wholesome as I can in order to just, I don't think it's about me anymore. I don't see it being about me. I'm just like, I've dedicated my life now. I've thrown away everything else. I've let go of, you know, my relationship, my job, all these things. And I'm just in this like flow. And so that's another tangent. That's a nice little ramble, but that's where I'm at right now, bro.
Yeah, man. I want to go back to something you said a few minutes ago, just about the things that we give our energy away to. Because I don't know if it's an age thing or if it's actually a movement at the moment, but I think there's a massive movement around this idea of like what it is to, well, in this instance, what it is to be a genuine man. I've started following a page that our mate Powley got me onto. I think he tagged me in a couple of posts. I'm sure you're all over it. Carnivores.
Yes, I knew it. He got me onto it too, mate.
Dude, and it is so good. I can't believe how much I enjoy the page. It's just,
Yeah.
not only are the memes hilarious, but there's just so much quality that comes out of it. It blows my mind. I'm never, like, every time I buy something at the supermarket now, as a result, I'm looking for seed oils and finding them everywhere just quietly. I can't believe that.
Yeah.
But secondly, one thing that I love about the guy who runs it is it's speaking about the vibe that you get from a particular person. I read what this guy's about and I go, you know what, I really relate to a lot of what you're talking about. And the idea of, what'd you say, 95% of men have watched porn in the last 2 weeks is staggering to me. And I would love to know a percentage of men who still buy into the idea that sort of rooting yourself silly on a weekend is the way to be a man. Like whoever's got the most girls is sort of at the highest level of the platform, and he goes right against that. And it's interesting to me because I don't know. I got married relatively young, and at the time I got married, it wasn't necessarily seen as a very cool thing to do. A lot of my mates were, and like there was, I didn't care, it didn't bother me, but a lot of my mates were going the opposite way, where it was like, hey, root yourself silly. And I go, well, we'll both do it. We'll just do it in different contexts. You know what I mean? And what was so funny was as I got older, or especially recently, I've started to notice that there's been a real change in a lot of people's attitude, especially online, about this idea that, hey, that's not what you have to do. Like your meaning's not found in porn. It's not found necessarily in money. It's not found in whatever. It's not found in how many chicks you have sex with. It's found more in what it is that you're talking about. Like, okay, what actually brings you to life? You're not born just to work in a corporate scene until you're 60 and then retire for 10 and die. And it's interesting to me because I think, as you talk about that, the idea that this has been such a hot conversation in so many avenues that I've stumbled upon. Have you noticed that that's become a little bit of a theme, that there's been almost a challenge to a lot of men to go, right, like what are you actually called to? Because this idea of drinking and sex and a 9 to 5 job forever, there's not a whole heap of meaning found there. And I think a lot of people who are honest, who have been in that scene for a while, would probably go, I feel that. I definitely did back in the day. Before I got married at 24, and I played that same game for about 5 or 6 years. And for me, as a young bloke, I was like, yeah, I'm not sure. This isn't what I thought it was.
Yeah, I definitely do think there's more and more awareness coming through around this, much like there's just more awareness around everything. You know, the COVID piece causing people to pause and consider things and slow down. Like, so much truth just comes through when we slow down and stop being busy. But I've had a lot of conversations with guys lately in the past 6 months, and a lot of them saying, hey, I've never been able to talk about this before. I don't have anyone else that I've chatted to this about, talking about things like semen retention, harnessing your sexual energy, not having casual sex, all these things. Mate, Carnivore Aurelius does a great job of bringing the humor to it. So being like, yeah, casual sex is the what does he say? Casual sex is the enemy of happiness and stuff. Just go get yourself a family and a cow. You know, it's all about the moo, the glorious moo. I love it, mate. I'm carnivore now as well.
In your diet, your carnivore diet?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, talk to me about that, man.
Oh, it's incredible, mate. Incredible. I've been on the whole diet merry-go-round for probably 8 years. It's paleo for a few years, keto. When I did yoga teacher training, and I was like, previous to that, I said I could never go vegetarian. I grew up just eating meat and veg, but not much veg and no fruit. I was very bland. and like no sauce or anything. Just give me meat, give me mashed potato, maybe some peas. And went on yoga teacher training. I said, fuck it. I got a month here. Most people are vegetarian. I'll give it a go. I started it and I continued for about a year. Went vegan for about half of that year, and then transitioned out of that as I started working at the poke bowl place. So I was having sashimi, so I sort of went pescatarian. Then sort of I've come through now. That was 4 years ago. Started eating meat again, and now it's just I'm still having fruit and a few veggies, like certain ones that don't have as many of the anti-nutrients or oxalates and lectins. Otherwise, it's like 2 steaks a day, heart and liver, some eggs, avocado, heaps of ghee. It's all organic. The beef I'm getting is not organic. It's grass-fed, regenerative farming, because organic in the beef industry can just be a marketing term, and they're actually in feedlots eating grain, which you don't want. You want a cow eating grass, as you would know from Carnivore Aurelius. And so, mate, for me personally, so this happened to merge two topics together. So when Christina left, my wife, that was 5 months ago when we separated, and she moved home to the Czech Republic. At that point, I've been, as I said, on this merry-go-round around diet, and always feeling like bloated, a lot of anxiety in my gut. And I've worked from the top down, gone through everything to just like eradicate anxiety from my life. And I felt, up until like 5 months ago, I was doing workshops and things, used to be so scared of public speaking. And I was like, I don't have any anxiety, except that there's a feeling of anxiety. And learning functional breathing and working on my functional breath patterns, my cadence, my chemistry, my capacity, that changed it dramatically. Then I cut out heaps of veg, put in heaps of meat, and cut out nuts, which I had a massive addiction to. When I did that, everything changed. That feeling completely went away when I cut nuts out. And I realized that all these foods were triggering my immune system because my body couldn't process them correctly. Taking nuts, for example, there's phytic acid, but there's also oxalates in the gut. And so when you have too much of something, obviously, everything in moderation. I was smashing like $100 of nuts a week for many years in my life. I was activating them myself, last few years, not that many, but still a lot. And after every meal, I'll go and smash a bunch of nuts. And it's really interesting. I'm like, I just love the crunch. They're good for me. I don't put on fat, so it's like, it's all good. But what I found by cutting them out, doing some research with a good friend of mine, Peter, he's an integrative health coach, and I've just done his New Paradigm Institute integrative health coaching course. In 6 months of just learning about functional breathing, functional nutrition, psychological systems. Amazing journey. That's what instigated me to try cutting out nuts, which I'd previously thought never could do it. Never. 1 week after, I was like, what are nuts? Completely forgot about them.
Wow.
Reason being, oxalates were triggering my immune system. I couldn't break them down. So then my immune system gets triggered. So I'm in sympathetic state and I get a rush of cortisol. So I get addicted to the hormones of stress. So then I eat my food, I go and smash some nuts, boom, I get a stress response, I'm on cortisol, go. It's the same thing as having coffees. So I found that like nuts, because nuts are the same thing within the carnivore, realm. Nuts, we're not supposed to be eating nuts, maybe 1 or 2 a day or something when we're foraging, but they don't eat nuts. Seeds, same thing, because they're not meant to be digested. Mainly vegetables, same thing. They got anti-nutrients or oxalates, lectins. Like sweet potato, I cut that out again like a week ago because I was getting bloated after my meals. Lectins, like sort of, bloating is inflammation. So it's like basically tearing up a bit of your gut and causing that to expand. So yeah. And the last thing being that like just eating more meat, mate, I feel so strong. I put on this year, since April, I put on like 8 kilos, training a bit, but just eating meat. My body's just loving it and just chunking on muscle.
Dude, I've recently started listening to Paul Saladino. Do you know Paul Saladino?
Is he bald?
Yes. No,
Yeah.
he's not. No, he's not. Sorry. No, I'm thinking of Paul Check when I said that. No, Paul Saladino. I heard him. I heard about him. on a podcast a little while ago, and I heard about him because this guy, he's pretty much, I think he calls it an animal-based diet. He's not on he's not carnivore. I think he might have been, but he's predominantly like what you just said. There's a lot of beef, there's a lot of liver, there's a lot of heart. If you want to laugh, go to his page because he eats sheep testicles, bull testicles, whatever else, and he does it with very little cooking, which is, I can't even do I can't do an undercooked egg. So the idea of raw sheep's nuts just it sort of rubs me up the wrong way. but this guy talks a lot about just the health benefits of organ meat, essentially. And like you, dude, I was I call myself a vegetarian, really. I wasn't a vegan because I always had eggs, but I was veggie. And one of the things that was interesting to me, just reading about this guy, was just learning about some of the actual health benefits of organ meat. And he was talking about how a lot of this organ meat, it's really unappealing to us. The idea of going to get flesh from a cow is okay. And I think it was his belief is a lot of it's got to do with marketing. You think of a liver, you think of an organ, you're like, oh, I couldn't touch it. But then for whatever reason, like you think of the flesh, it's like no dramas. I guess it's the same reason why some cultures have no trouble eating a horse. Whereas in Australia, like a horse, no, that's a farm animal. We can only eat cows and chickens. It's very strange. So just last week, for the first time, and I've still got to get over this attitude. Like I'm such a pussy when it comes to certain foods, and organ meat is one of those foods where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm about to eat a liver. Give me my oats. So Jesse blended it up with
oats?
Jesse blended it up with just some chicken mince and made chicken liver meatballs. Dude, she made like this really nice sauce that went on it, and it went down really well. I was just watching my boy smash it. Had no idea about what he was eating, and there was no hesitation. It was just lovely food that he craved and that he loved. Like he couldn't get enough of him. So I tried to take a little bit of Charlie Popplestone's 2-year-old attitude towards this food and just get curious. And it's actually lovely when I didn't think about what it was that I was eating. But that's another thing. Like I think this carnivore world and this organ meat world is another thing that I've noticed people speaking about a lot. But dude, I'm very new to it, and here's a couple of the things that I get really apprehensive about. In saying this, I have recently started to learn a little bit about what the carnivore world, a lot of people in that scene speak about when it comes to, I don't know what the actual term is, but when it comes to sort of the fight-off mechanisms that certain plants use to prevent other animals from eating it, and some of the negative health effects that have on humans who eat it. I'd never heard of that until recently. I look at, and you've probably got counter examples, and that's why I'm bringing it to you. I look at sort of blue zone areas, the oldest, sort of so-called healthiest people in the world, or the highest number of centenarians when it comes to health. And from what I understand, most of them are sort of plant-based. They have a little bit of meat in their diet, organic, grass-fed, like natural good meat, but a lot of what they eat is plant-based. But then there's so many other factors. It's not just their food and diet. Then you've got to look at their faith. You've got to look at their exercise routine. You've got to look at their community. Like you can't just say it's because of their diet they live this long. But one of the things was the diet. And so did you have any apprehension around going into like a full-blown meat diet being a relatively new thing? Because that's my only apprehension. And the thing with diet, dude, it's so confusing because there's so many people who are way smarter than me in the food industry, and they're like, hey, a vegan diet's fantastic for you. And then another doctor will come out and also really smart and looks fit and strong, and he's like, nah, it's a bullshit diet. Don't touch it. And I'm like, well, if even the experts are disagreeing, what am I supposed to do? I'm trying to work on my own stuff. I can't bloody pick up a nutrition degree just to try and decipher what you're saying. But I was just curious to hear your thoughts around that, because obviously, like health is your thing, like me.
Yeah, mate, such a good point. And it's something that I struggled with and grappled with for so long, because you get this guy saying, this is the way, someone else saying, this is the way. And what I've realized now is they're probably both selling something, because one man's food is another man's poison. That's what my mate and my teacher, Peter, told me.
Great point.
That's it. Like what's good for you might not be good for me. For me, living with this feeling of anxiety, bloating all the time, I wanted to eliminate things out of my diet and just get to a really, really clean diet. When you look at meat and organs and what that provides to the body in terms of nutrition, you get everything, especially with things like liver in there. Like, one little side note is I get this just from the butcher, um, minced heart and liver together. So it's just heart and liver. They're both minced and put in a thing. That's amazing because heart makes liver taste much more meaty, because liver is not like a meaty sort of tissuey organ. It tastes very strange, and it's as you know, it's almost metallic or something. So I'm not into it. So for me, it was cut out everything, come down to something that's really simple that gives me everything. So it gave me all my nutrition, my protein, my fat, and I like going keto as well, because when I eat starch, so call it bread or sweet potato and potatoes, chickpeas, beans, I'll crave them, and I'll crave sugar, because starch and sugar, same thing in the body. So cutting those things out, I let go of my cravings for sugar. I felt amazing, and I stopped having this bloating and this anxiety in my gut. So I said, okay, this is good for me. That doesn't mean it's good for me for forever. I'll keep doing it for as long as I feel good with it. That's why I've sort of weaved through. I'm looking at my kitchen. I'm seeing like my fruit bowl and like eating papaya, avocado, mangoes, blackberries, and some leaves. Some rocket and some squash or pumpkin, eggs and cheese. So primarily animal based, as you say, for sure. So that's my thoughts on it. Like, and as you say, there's so many factors in this whole game. Like, what about placebo? People think that's the healthiest diet in the world, and their body's incredible. It'll always work with. You look at people that are eating, McDonald's and drain cleaner, aka Coca-Cola, all day every day, and they're getting around, they're doing stuff. I have one of those meals, boom, my body's like, whoa, what was that? So it's like, it's all relative, like what level of health. I know that there are measures, and that would be quickly debunked. That what level of health are they at? Well, they're measuring it with modern science and Western medicine. I don't know, but yeah, it's interesting. There's one other thing of you look at the ancient cultures, all the tribes, and what percentage of animal to plant based they were. And interestingly, it changes and varies, but the really cold climates where veggies don't grow, that's where, like Eskimos and stuff, that's where they were primarily 97% animal based, meat based carnivores. And then you get the other ones where there's more room to grow things. There's a bigger percentage of plants in there, and like they're just working with what they got as well. So there are a lot of animals running around. They'd eat those. If I don't know where and how vegetable plants just grow in the wild. I never see them, but I'd love to know.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, where do they? I mean, I've seen. I guess that's a fruit. I was going to say raspberries. I saw a lot of that when I was doing the
Yep.
Camino a few years ago. But in terms of just going for a wander down the street, like it's a very farm produced product, isn't it?
Yeah, especially veggies. You get fruit for sure. Coconuts, bananas, papayas, like tropical fruits, berries. Yep. But you get you don't just see like a broccoli growing in the bush.
Yeah, that's so true. You really don't. I've never thought of it like that. I've never seen a broccoli just growing through a bush when I've gone for a walk. You see apple trees, you see strawberries, you see any fruit really.
And you don't see the birds going in just hacking into a sweet potato. They're going for berries. They're going for fruit.
Yeah, it's a good point, man. Actually, yeah, that's really interesting. To go back to Jordan Peterson, because he's on the carnivore diet as well. And speaking of anxiety, I think he's got a pretty deep family history with depression, from what I understand. I think his grandparents had it, his parents had it. I know his daughter struggles with it a little bit. And one of the things that he put that down to was a really compromised immune system. There was a lot of inflammation in his body. There was a lot of just swelling, and it had really negative impacts on his overall health, from joint health to mental health. And he went on a bit of a rabbit hole and adopted this carnivore diet probably 2 or 3 years ago. And I hear him speak about the impact that it had on him, and very similar. Like, I'm not sure if he explains it as an anxiety reduction, though I have heard him say that, a lot of the depression's diminished or completely disappeared. But he said for him, like he was carrying a little bit too much weight, and he's just trimmed out. Like, he doesn't look unhealthily skinny, I don't think. And the question was asked to him, yeah, sort of like what I asked you, yeah, but don't you look at some of the healthiest cultures in the world, for lack of a better term? Because as you say, like, there's plenty of people who are living healthy diets or healthy lifestyles. Paul Saladino refers to a Ugandan tribe that he went and spent a few weeks with, who are predominantly meat-based as well. The meats, the organs, and things like that. And he goes, yeah, well, maybe, but at the same time, I feel incredible. And he goes, and if this means that I live 10 years shorter for him, and he's just playing, if this means I live 10 years shorter, but those 10 years are fantastic, but that shortness of life is swapped for a quality of life. He goes, for me, I take that, because there's a lot of times where I struggle to get out of bed and just get about my day because I'm so upset, so depressed. And I thought, well, it's a fair point. Like, it's a fair trade. If you feel that much better and you're happy to make a trade like that, if that even exists,
Yeah.
I understand that. And you look at a meat-based diet, and as you say, grass-fed meat, it's clean, it's healthy. You can't argue with the nutrients that you get out of it. And you compare that to your average Australian diet or US-based diet or anywhere in the West-based diet, a lot of places in the world, you go, okay, like, you're really going to argue with me about my diet? Like, have a look in your pantry. Have a look at the sugar content of that cereal box and the ingredients of that bread and the contents of that jam and, all the cold and flu medicine you got on your shelf, and you're going to tell me that there's something wrong with what I'm doing. It's a tough argument to win, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't need any supplements. I don't need any medicine. There's something I'll just drop and then move on. There's a big argument that carnivore is more vegan than veganism. I was looking at a website.
I know where you're going, and I know where you're going. Keep going, because it makes sense, bro. Yeah,
I haven't read into it, so I won't speak to it. But just for anyone interested, there's a website. There's a bunch of information around it, but it's quite interesting to consider other perspectives with an open mind. What else was I going to say there? Oh, mate, for me, quality of life is everything. You never know when time's up. I was taught that lesson very strongly 5 years ago, and since then I just wake up and I'm like, thank you for another day. Like, I'm so stoked to be here, to get to be here and talk to you, to get to go and train in the gym, to get to jump in my ice bath. It's all a gift. It's all an opportunity. I just want to live the highest quality life I can, the highest caliber, live as much of this experience, be as present as I possibly can to the gift and like the beauty that's in this moment right now. That's what I want. If it means I die in a year, mate, that's my time up. I don't know. It doesn't matter. What's the point in living a year that's just, because I was there. I ran. I wasn't present. I was running the whole time. I was on drugs or committing crimes or getting in fights because I was just so scared of just being quiet. Talk about, so much truth comes through in the quiet. Didn't want to go there. And so many people don't. And, talking again about like, I was addicted to cortisol. So I was eating nuts. Now I'm a chill dude. Like, I'm doing good things for myself. I'm doing breath work every week. I'm doing an ice bath most days. And, but then it's completely, in my blind side. I'm eating nuts every night. And that's the piece there. Was like talking about Jordan Peterson and the depression. Like, I've been there as well. And mine was just this physiological sense of anxiety where my body, like, you get tripped into a sympathetic state. So your body's like, oh, when you're in a sympathetic state, your middle ear actually tunes to lower vibrational sounds. Your brain starts going, what's the problem? Where is the problem? Where's the threat? Is there a lion close by? Like, where is it? And so I'm walking down the street and I'm like, what's that person doing? What's happening over there? And I'm not inwardly focused. I'm not present, all these things. So that was why it helped me so much with that feeling.
Dude, I think we spoke about this last time we chatted, but I can't remember. What happened 5 years ago?
I had a big fall in Greece. I was over in Greece.
That's
I just
right.
finished.
That's right, man.
Uni. Yeah, we spoke about it. So, yeah, reached the end of the road of the path I'd, taken, running away from everything or responsibility and everything I was scared of, just running. And at that point, I reached the end, and I had to say, what do I change here? So I started running towards everything I was scared of and started approaching life with a different attitude of what can I do, not what can't I do.
I
That's what
quoted
I
this.
found.
I stole Carl Jung's quote the other day on a podcast that I posted last week with Mark Dobson. Uh, Great quote. That which you most need in your life is found in the place you least want to look. And the idea that you just mentioned of just running towards the thing that scares you, I'm really attracted to that as well. I think
Yeah.
for me, that's part of what got me involved in stand-up comedy, because there's an
Right.
idea of being in front of a room full of people and it's literally sink or swim.
Yeah.
There's something attractive about that, and the quality of learning that comes out of an experience like that. You can write as many jokes, you can practice in the lounge room by yourself, but until you stand in a room full of 50 people and they're there to laugh and you're supposed to be the one bringing the jokes, you can't learn as quickly as you do in
Yeah.
that situation, whether it's the jokes that you've written or whether it's the just the ability to navigate your way out of a joke that's just bombed. If you pause for laughter and there's no laughter there, you can't just sit in the silence and be comfortable, because everyone in the room's feeling the same thing. Oh, it was funny the other day. I had a gig here pretty locally, and the MC introduced me, and I was the local act. And I thought, oh, this is going to be good because I'll be able to play off the fact that I'm a local. They'll get around me a little bit. The
Oh yeah.
MC they go, this guy's only from 10 minutes away. So no doubt that's going to mean you're going to support him more. And one bloke at the back of the room goes, nah. And, and, and it was like, it was funny to me, but the rest of the audience kind of just sat there and took it. And it wasn't like and you know, those icebreaker moments where someone says something funny and so you laugh? It was
Mm.
like this guy yelled it out and everyone was like, oh yeah, he still has to be funny. And so I just walked out into this ice cold room and I was like, oh, learn to tell jokes, motherfucker.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it sort of worked out in my favor because, I've been at it for a couple of years now, so I kind of could take the piss out of the situation. But yeah, man, like the idea of just going towards that which terrifies you. It's the ice bath, man. Like, I don't know if you feel the same way, but for me, the ice water swims, I do it over in the ocean sometimes, and there's a few factors there. Like, I shit myself when I'm out there on like a bit of a cloudy morning where the water's a bit dark because I'm thinking, oh, sharks, I'm thinking it's cold. There's a few waves, there's not many people around. But there's something about going in and getting it done that when you come home, you're like, man, I'm the man. I'm the man. You did it again, Tice. And gradually that fear that you hold on to, it loses its power. Or cold showers. They used to scare me a little bit. And now I've done them so many times. I was like, Tice, you've done this 500 times, bro. Just turn the shower on, get in. You're like,
Yeah.
oh. And they're like sort of trivial examples. But at the same time, like when you start to recognize that in the small things in your life, you can start to implement it into some bigger things. You know, it's a cool attitude to have.
For sure. I lived for a couple of years with this motto of do something every day that sucks.
Yeah, bro.
And I now see it, it's a little bit of a saddest thing to say, but in a way, but everything's relative. And so if you wake up in the morning and you do the worst thing that's going to happen to you that day and you do it by conscious choice, like everything else is a breeze. You know, if you can take yourself into an ice bath, I point over here because we got one on the balcony, then you can go up on stage. Like, you know, it's all relative, but it's different modes. And I feel the same thing about running workshops. It's like, you know, still get nerves, but then you go in there and it's a way of stepping out of your comfort zone. And for me, that's what I'm obsessed with, is like, how much expansion can I get in this day, in this week, in this year, talking back to making the most of it. I'm like, I lived just like contracted. My world was this big for so long, for 25 years. And I've gone, all right, let's see how big we can get it. What can I be comfortable with? You know, how many people can I talk in front of? You know, and the same thing, you started doing that. I started teaching yoga classes because I was so scared of being up in front of people and chatting and talking and leading them, like being the leader and being the guide. Like that was, no way. I was just a follower.
Yeah, man,
Yeah.
that's cool. I like the idea of just seeing how big you can make your world. Because I feel like that sometimes. For a fairly extroverted social guy, when I'm out, Jesse always teases me because there's nothing I love more than just being at home. And whenever there's like a, a social situation, she's the one that's usually excited to go. And I'm always like, oh, there's so many things I would rather do. And that's like an area of my life I've got to be careful not to minimizing, because I notice as I get older, I sort of lean into that. I'm like, hey, this is just who I am now. And just recently I've started to go, no, you know what? Like you need it. Like this idea of community is important to me as well. And sometimes, and it's only ever the lead up to the actual going to the event. When you get there, most of the time, there's a few cool people that you can have a bit of a chat to, and I never leave that party going, I wish we didn't come. Dude, I was going to ask you before I forget, what are you using as an ice bath? Have you got a legitimate one, or have you got like a tub that you use and fill with ice, or how do you do it?
Just a chest freezer. I can just turn this around. It's just a chest freezer. I managed to get it as a gift for free. So
oh, sweet.
That's it there.
So what do you do, bro? You just plug that in?
You just fill it with water and you plug it in and you go plug and play.
And what temperature are you getting in it?
Between 0 and it'll just rise. So this morning it was cold because we just cleaned it out. About every 2 weeks we clean it out and get the water out, drain it, fill it back up again, and then put it on for like 24 hours, maybe a bit more, and it freezes up. So there's ice around the rim, and so you get in there and you sort of ice on the sides, and it's probably 1 degrees, and then it sort of just rises over the next few days, and then we put it back on again and just cycle it like that and just play with the temperature accordingly. Got this we've got a lot of friends on the street, like a lot of people around here, and they're all as crazy as us, so we started getting a bit of a leaderboard, not a leaderboard, but a challenge board coming up. Chill fam. We've got Jordo, Kado, Krista, Nick, Barnaby, everyone comes in. We're getting it on the Insta, just trying to encourage people to
explain this chart to me. So what have we got? So you got, I can see the weekdays across the top, and what's
weekdays and minutes. Sorry. It's just minutes.
Dude, is that 35 minutes?
No, 3, 5, 6.
Oh, sorry. I see different days.
So you can see as the temperature got higher through the couple of days, and then I would have turned it on. They're the 3 days I was home last week.
Wow, bro. So you're sitting in 0 degree temperatures for, was that 3 minutes?
Mm.
That is so cold. When we were in London, there was Hampstead Heath was a lake that Pally and I went to a couple of times. I'm going to tell you, I was there a lot more regularly than he was, mainly because of geography. I was closer to it, but I also took him once and I knew he didn't enjoy it.
I haven't put him in the ice bath yet.
I noticed his name wasn't on that board. I'm going to have to message him about that. We went down, and I think the coldest I ever got in at was either 5 degrees or 8 degrees. I think my wife got in one day when it was 5 and I wasn't around. Anyway, we'll say 8 just so I'm not riling myself up too much. 8 was cold, dude. Like, and when it gets to 8, when you get into single digits, like every degree colder is very noticeable. I noticed, like, because I did a couple it went from like 11 to 10 to 9 to 8. And I remember 8 being like, oh, this is quite brutal. So 0 is, what are you doing there? That's where the breath work comes in.
Yeah. It's probably more like 1 degree. I think if it was 0, it'd just be
sitting on an ice cube.
Yeah. If it's running water, it can get colder. So when we're I was in the mountains a couple of weeks ago, and that water's cold. And because it's moving, it's taking that thermal layer around off your body. So I'm in there, I'm moving my legs around, keeping the water circulating. But yeah, mate, you just get in there and try and slow the breathing down. What I'm teaching people now is allow yourself to be freaked out. Allow yourself to go into that stress response, because what we're training is the flexibility to come back down. So don't get in there and be like, oh my God, I've got to just be really calm straight away. Just get in there and just go. And obviously do that over 30 seconds. And then you calm yourself down, and then you just tune in, and you can either you can time minutes. That's great. And that's what I do there. But what that's just a way of keeping track. What I'm measuring I'm not saying I'm going to get in there for 6 minutes. I get in there and I'm like, every day is different where you're mentally at, and what time of the day as well. Like in the nighttime, much harder because your body's cooling down already, getting ready for rest. And so you think about the idea of like mental walls, just like when you go for a run, you go, okay, I'm going to go through 3 walls. I was sitting in the sauna yesterday. It's all the same stuff. It's just stress to the body. I'm sitting in the sauna and I'm like, oh, it's a 3rd round in the sauna for the 3rd 15 minutes. I've had cold showers in between each one. I'm really gassed. And I'm like, okay, I'm hitting the wall here. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to see if I can go through one more, because it's so cool to see that like where you're at in that point is like, this is it. I have to get out now. That's all. And you go, okay, just wait, just keep breathing, just a few more moments. And then it just dissolves. And I'm like, oh, and I'm good again. How beautiful is that? And I'm like, okay, cool. It's just so good to see that, the mind's just, and this is the thing, the mind's a tool. If the mind becomes the master, as everybody says, then we become the slave. So we've got to make sure that we are in control of the mind and flexing that willpower muscle and that strength and the courage to choose and decide what we want to do and be discerning around it. And that's just the best way for me to do it, is to keep on, leaning into that as much as I can.
I like what you said at the start of the podcast as well. I can't remember the exact quote. What was it? Crisis is or
Oh yeah, I
chaos or
think it was
something.
offline. Yeah, like crisis is opportunity. I believe in Chinese characters, they are the same character. It means the same thing. Crisis is opportunity. Every time there's a crisis, you just got an opportunity to learn from it, grow from it, respond to it.
It's a cool thought to take into every day, because there's certain activities in my day where I might dread it, or I'll know I have a certain negative response to certain situations. Like admin is one of those things where when I know there's admin that's got to be done, I go into fluster mode, like, oh, I've just got to get this bullshit done. I can't believe this is so, and I bring this real negative attitude. And I'm bringing some trivial examples today. I know it, but admin's where I see it in myself most commonly. And it is interesting, like the idea of going, all right, like there's an opportunity for development here, and you get it every single day. It's going to happen a couple of times a day. It might not be admin. It might be, it's 5 a.m. and my kid's going nuts and I just can't be bothered because I didn't sleep well that night. My easiest response is to go, fuck, like this is a shit start to the day. I can't believe this is how I start my day. I used to start with meditation, a green smoothie, and now my son shed his pants and I have to change it. But I notice in myself, like, what was it, on Sunday for the first time, bro? I had to look after this sounds so ridiculous because I call myself like a very hands-on dad. But the other day I had to look after both of my kids. I got a 2-month-old now as well. And I had to look after,
Congrats.
thank you, brother. I don't even know if you knew that. I had
No.
to look after little Ollie, my new man, and Charlie together for the same time I think it was 5 hours, and I've never done it before. I struggle sometimes just with one. And so all week last week, I kept catching myself like dreading it because I'm like, oh, this is going to be chaos. I had to get to a comedy gig, had a babysitter coming at like 6. And in my head all week, I noticed myself without any conscious thought, just catastrophizing how badly it was going to go. I was going to miss my gig because my son shed his pants and my other kid fell down the stairs or whatever. And then I knew in the week that whatever I'd made it out to be, it was so much worse than what it was going to be. So Sunday afternoon came around, turned out, and it's not always going to be the case, but turned out both kids were little legends. It's a pretty cruisy afternoon, had some real helpful instructions from my wife. We went out to the park. My older boy was in the best mood. My little boy was just chilling. And it's so crazy to me how you can paint such a bad picture, and the reality of the situation that you're dreading so much is so much different. And that's something I catch myself doing, not just with my kids, but in a lot of areas. The anticipation of an event, a lot of the time, will be so much more like a negative anticipation for an event. A lot of the time for me is so much more intense than what the actual event is, regardless. So it's like, all right, that's like my little teacher at the moment. You got anything like that throughout your day where you're like, all right, that's an opportunity that I get every single day as well?
100%.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd
Mind
say
is
yes.
the master of hypothesizing and building dragons, mate. Like everything's like, oh my God, it's going to be so intense and hectic and hard. And talk about social events. I'm very similar to you. Like when I'm out there, I'm extroverted. I'm social. I love talking to people. I just love humans. I love learning about them. I love hearing what they're up to, how they operate. We are all individual. It's amazing. But yeah, I find it's just always there, and I just sort of try and detach from it. I go, okay, cool. Thanks for your consideration and your concern. It's just my way of reminding myself to prepare as adequately as I can. Yeah, that's kind of it. Just detaching from the intensity of it and the emotion of it. Just go like, anxiety to me is a sign that I'm on the edge of growth, which is the edge of discomfort. And I'm quick to reframe as well, because I'm now learning that not all growth has to happen in the discomfort zone, as I talk about it, or in the courage zone, which is you got your comfort zone, and then outside of that, you got courage zone or discomfort zone. That's where we grow. We can also grow in the middle though. But anxiety just means, oh, I don't know what that is yet. I haven't been to this particular gig. I haven't done this thing before. So it's just my brain going, I don't know what to expect. I don't know how it's going to go. So I'm going to be worried, you know. So that's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've also got a newfound respect for families, fathers and mothers. I've got to say, particularly mothers who are just always home with the kids after spending some time with my sister and her first two kids. So the first two, my niece and nephew. Just having two of them, he's 5 months and she's 18 months, and it's so much going on. I never really understood, mate. It's
dude,
insane. I
me
don't know how
either.
people do more than two. Yeah.
Me,
The
me
sleep thing,
man.
the food, the moods, the cycles, it's all over the place, mate. It's chaos.
It's so
But
chaos. I was talking to a comedian the other night. He's got 3 kids, and he goes, yeah, it's funny. You have one kid, you're a hobby parent. It's like you've bought 100 acres and you got 2 cows and a sheep. I mean, it's a change, but it's not crazy. You feel it's crazy, and then you have 2 kids, and this is what I relate to so much. And he goes, and 1+1 doesn't equal 2. He goes, 1+1 equals 10, and that's what it feels like. And
right.
Speaking of chaos, he goes, the funny one after that, he goes, after 2, it just gets so ridiculous. You're like, all right, we've got 3. All right, there's one. Where's the other kid? Oh, he's in the cupboard. No worries. All right, let's go.
Yes.
And, it's such a good point because, dude, you've nailed it. Like, I'm so glad. I had no idea. Like, with a few things. First of all, I used to see parents on a plane with kids, and I was like, get your shit together. Like, I'm trying to enjoy my movie. Your kid's going nuts. I can't relax. Like, you're a bad parent. Sort your life out. I went to America with my 2-year-old in the middle of the year. It was a long story short, bro. This is a fun story for you. I'll tell you the whole thing another time. It took us 50 hours between vaccine exemptions not being accepted, flights missed, delayed flights. It was just chaos, bro. Anyway, about 43 hours in, I just wanted to make a public apology to every single parent that I had ever criticized. And there was a lot of them because my boy was that kid. And I was like, I just knew I was that guy who was just the dickhead parent, that there would be some 23-year-old sitting in the back of the plane going, mate, get your life together.
Yeah.
And I was like, you don't understand. This is really hard. Yeah, dude. Yeah, what a whirlwind. What a whirl. Yeah, it's a crazy experience, dude. I used to hear parents explain like kids are the best thing ever and the most challenging ever, and I was like, okay, cockhead, like no worries. And it's the perfect description. I can't describe it any better. It's yeah, wild, man, wild. That's funny.
The 23-year-old on the plane is still a kid. Let's put it that way. I think I've still been a kid until I've just realized that I've got respect for parents now. Must like we were coming. I think I told you last time. I can't remember exactly when we spoke and what point I was at with Christina and our journey, but and maybe I just wasn't ready to unpack it yet. But we were preparing to start trying for kids at the end of this year, so I was like on the path towards fatherhood.
Dude.
I was getting ready for it. I was excited for it. I was like, all right, let's step into it. And now, spending time with my niece and nephew, it's so beautiful, and appreciate it so much. And talk about opportunity, right? It's like I did a session with a friend of mine who does a lot of channeling and energy healing. And in March, she sat me down and said, you have catastrophic change coming up. And I sat there and I went, wow, talk about the mind. Boom. What is it? It's just, making up so many stories about what it's going to be and what it could, like, what's going to happen to me. It was hilarious. Like, it's going to be in business. It's going to be around this or that. And then boom, next minute, like Christina and I are both sitting there like, you have to go home. Like, you're not grounded here. You're not thriving here. You're just surviving. This is, never really fully, meant to be here. Just our love was keeping her here, and I couldn't keep her here. And I can see that my role and my, opportunity is here to serve this community that I've, subconsciously been building for so long, and her to go back home and get grounded and healthy. And it's been a beautiful journey. But yeah, talk about catastrophic change and, one way going towards fatherhood, being in a committed relationship. I was with the love of my life and had no doubts that we're going to be together until we we're old and wrinkly, and then now I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to be a father. I've got the opportunity to travel more. I've been on the road the last 8 weekends. I've been out. I haven't been home. And then every day, every week, 2 days a week, I'm away as well, doing some work on my dad's property. So yeah, talk about change, and you never know what's coming.
Oh, dude. So I'd been speaking to Powley. I speak to him every few weeks, and I just throughout the year sort of just asked, "Oh, how's Kade going? Like, what's going on?" And man, it must have been like 9 months ago. I asked the question, and he's like, "Dude, like," he sort of gave me a bit of a rundown on what was going on, and I was like, "Holy shit! Like that's an intense situation." And yeah, he'd sort of unpacked a little bit of what was going on, and then he told me your lady had moved back. So that was when did that happen, man? Because that is talk about a catastrophic change like that. That throws that. What's the expression? Yeah, it's just a
spanner in the works.
Spanner in the works, to say the least. Yeah,
like a bomb in the engine.
Yeah, exactly.
That was in July 12. She left. Yeah, so I think was it 5 months now? Yeah, just over 5 months.
Yeah, and that's like she's gone back now. Like she's you guys decided to have you hit pause, or have you said, all right, that's done, or like where are you guys at?
From the place where we were doing it from was a deep knowing. After we sat with it, she went to the Czech Republic, her home, in April for a month, and I was here, and I was doing a lot of work. I was doing a lot of breath work with psychedelics, and doing that, getting a lot of insights and connecting a lot of dots, and it just became really apparent to me. I was like, hang on, she is so often homesick. And I just saw that, hang on, like before she fully committed to living here on her own accord, we got together, and then our love was just so beautiful, so perfect. We lifted each other up so high that we just kept on going. But there was this undercurrent of just homesickness. She just wasn't grounded here. And I see it like, she was sort of 1 foot here, 1 foot still in Czech the whole time, but here for our love, for our union. But before you you got to put yourself first. And so it came to that point. I saw that, and she was at home and she saw the same thing. COVID definitely exaggerated this, which is a positive because this would have come up anyway and it had to happen. Then she came home, and it was a really tough 2 months because she was really going through, a deep process of sitting with all of this. I jumped into my left brain, my masculine brain, for a long time there, and I just worked it all out. I saw the vision, I saw the why, I rationalized it. I could see how clearly it was meant to happen. And through the last 5 months since she's left, just the pieces just keep on unraveling and just building this whole picture of why it had to happen that way. You meet people for a season, reason, or lifetime, and I learned more in my entire life from Chris than anything else and anyone else. And so it was perfect in that way. And yeah, the undercurrents of the whole thing, she really helped me become a man, and that masculine came through. And as I found my purpose with this, facilitation and coaching, that's when things shifted. I was helping her step into her feminine and let go of that masculine, control. And as we sort of transition to this like crossroads point, that's when it changed. And there's so many layers to it, and I'll sort of pause it there because don't want to share too much, maybe for her sake as well. But it was just the most beautiful thing to be able to and the hardest thing in my entire life, to be able to go through this and to let go of something that you hold so dearly. It's been really empowering as I've come through the other side of it. But bloody hell, like sitting at the airport and, having, the love of your life there and just knowing this is the right thing, having to stay in that masculine brain and go, this is right for her, because she was working very hard on her health, but she wasn't completely healthy. She wasn't thriving. She was just surviving because she wasn't grounded. She wasn't aligned. She wasn't rooted here. She's rooted over there, but she's living here. So it wasn't, in alignment. So she wasn't flowing. She's working so hard all the time. She was in a stress state, all these things. And she did such a good job. And that's beautiful because she learned how to look after herself. Going home, having more ease, she'll be able to flourish. But for me, standing at the airport, brother, and, having her take my wedding ring off my finger and put it on my other hand, and then, her having a lot of challenge to leave, to walk away. And I had to just say, like, you got to go now. It's time to go.
Bro, man, I'm sorry to hear. That is a brutal experience. As you say, like, I love your perspective on it, but I can't imagine a bigger challenge than that. Like I often say to Jesse, it's like my worst nightmare is the inevitable fact. Like for me, like assuming one of us is going to go first. I'm talking about not go overseas. I'm talking about like when we leave this earth.
Yeah.
I go like my worst nightmare is the idea that you got to try and just figure out life without each other. And I guess, dude, who knows what the future holds? But like I guess the space that you sit in at the moment, it's probably that similar challenge. I remember when Jesse's parents got divorced, her mum said, it's just like, I wish one of us had just died because this is more of a challenge to me than what the death would be. Like knowing that person's still out there and we're trying to navigate life without him. It's like,
Totally.
That's the ultimate challenge. And like, how have you navigated the last 6 months or so, bro? Like, what have you? Because grief is a weird thing. I spoke about this on the podcast last Friday. It was all about grief, and I've had a few experiences with grief in my time, and it often takes me a minimum couple of weeks to realize what's sort of going on, like what the pain I'm feeling is. And you're like, oh, of course it's the loss. But for me, it sort of came out in just like I was grumpy and I was short and I was frustrated and a bit more aggressive and bit,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a really cool sort of piece to lay on top of this first in terms of weaving in a little bit of theory and nervous system stuff. So there's a concept called the interbrain, and the interbrain is something we see with, everybody that you have a deep rapport and love with, but it happens massively between mother and child and father and child, baby. Interbrain being, it's not in the brain, but in the mammalian brain. So we've got the reptilian brain, then the mammalian brain grew on top of that because we're reptiles first, then mammals, and then humans. Prefrontal cortex, thinking, self-analyzing thought, thinking of death, future, past, present, whatever. In the mammalian brain, we've got this interbrain, and they've mapped it, and it's how we connect with people, and you start understanding what baby needs without baby talking to you. My mum and I always finish each other's sentences. I have a big ability to know what people are talking about, even if they start talking, I'm like, yeah, I get it. And then I finish finish the sentence, and I'm like, yep, that's what just the essence of it, So for me, like what I dealt with there and what you're talking about there is it's a very like physiological loss, because there's this part of you that has this loved one there and you have an energetic bond. Your nervous system co-regulates with this person, and there's been a lot of learning, which I'll lead to maybe at the end if I can remember to get there, about owning your own energy and what you derive, where you derive things from. But for me, I knew that I had the two options. I could distract myself, go and get heaps drunk, go and sleep around and either cover it up, push it down, or just completely leave my mind using drugs and everything else. And that's obviously a very old program, which I wasn't going to run. Other thing, well, I guess within that was just get smashed with work, just get addicted to work and just keep myself really, really busy. Keeping the mind busy, things don't have time to surface and arise. So 2 days after she left, I took myself in my van, my big, it's funny, a DHL van, big DHL van's just pulled up outside. I was like, is that my van? Because it's a yellow, mine's an old DHL, so it's a big yellow Sprinter, with, pretty good setup in there. And so I took myself away in the van and I went up north. I was heading towards the Byron area. I was going to go visit my mum for, a day or two, and my sister in the Gold Coast, but primarily just to get away and to go allow myself some open space. So I went to the rainforest for almost a week in Dorrigo, just behind Bellingen, really beautiful spot. And mate, I just allowed myself to completely unravel. It was a mess. I was like in the deepest pain, deepest grief I've ever felt. It was like you fucking lost organs. I'm leaking, I'm draining, and my anxiety and my insecurity was through the roof. It was like I went back 8 years in time. I was a mess, absolutely. But I stuck to my practices. I woke up every morning, I did a breath retraining practice, so functional breathing, really mundane stuff, but the best thing you can do for your health. And I would then go for a walk, come back, make a cacao. Then I would, what else would I do then? Then I'd make lunch. That and stuff takes so long. It's like when you're camping, now we're at midday. I've done nothing, but that's the point of it. And just had these really simple days, mate. Didn't put anything on the agenda. Turned my phone off for 2 weeks. Didn't listen to any podcasts. Didn't listen to any music for the first week when I was driving. And so it was just silence, allowing the mind to go crazy. And the biggest thing that helped me was giving myself permission to be confused and lost. I said, I'm not going to know anything right now, because I know in my nervous system, my state, I'm going to be in a state of loss, grief. I'm not going to be able to make decisions about the future. I'm not going to be able to plan things out. I'm not going to be able to make good decisions. So I said, turn it all off, and you got to feel to heal. These are feelings that are coming up. So I weave this line, like I made this juggle between feeling everything that came up whenever it did. And I started that as soon as we made the decision. I say I was in my left brain. Whenever a feeling of loss would come up, before Chris left, when she's still here, her coping mechanism is to sort of withdraw and shut off. And I just kept on holding space and re-navigating our relationship and helping us recreate our dynamic, literally day by day, week by week, as two ships just beginning to sail in different directions instead of just moving to a different ocean. So we really nicely navigated how we're going to change the way we talk and the way we express love and all these things. And so like the biggest thing to help with grief for me, in my experience, was to feel it, to allow it to come up, not to hide from it.
Yeah.
And just to be like my crying, it happened most days around sunset, and I'd be driving somewhere, because at sunset I'd go and I'd drive to another spot. After I left the rainforest, I made my way up to the hinterland in the Gold Coast. And it was like the first day, I'm like, I know how to cry, man. Like, you know how to cry, Tyson? Yeah, like you cry, you fucking let it out. Second day, I'm like, well, okay, there's a bit more there. All right. By the fifth day, I'm wailing, brother, like nothing I've ever known before. I never knew that was how I could cry like that heavily, that heartfelt, that deep, and it was huge. And afterwards, I'd feel, a sense of relief. And every time it came up, I said, okay, we're here for it. But here's the thing I was juggling with, was not getting addicted to a feeling. Talk about feeling addicted to the hormones of stress like cortisol. Not getting addicted to being the victim and pitying myself.
Yeah.
Because I knew that was a possibility, to sit there and go, oh, and I can sit in that. I think we all can. Oh, poor me. Woe is me. I've lost the love of my life. What am I going to do? Fucking why do I deserve this? Blah, blah, blah. Just a story about it, and it's okay to go there, but just pull. And I didn't. I pulled, or maybe I did, but I was really like able to hold a view of myself and watch myself in all my moments. And I think that's because, and I believe it is, because I kept these practices up. Still doing my cold swims, still doing my breath work, all of the tools that I'd built and developed over many years came to use. And I say this about the ice bars and the breath work. If these don't help you in your real life, why are you doing it? Then you probably are a sadist. Like, you're just getting in cold water and punishing yourself for something. But if that helps you when your kid poos himself and you're worrying about going and doing your gig at night, and you go, hang on, what do we do now? I'm just feeling a state of stress. My body's just come into sympathetic. There's a bit of cortisol. I'm aroused. Let's just breathe it down or just relax. Just lay down for 2 minutes, pause, self-regulate. Right. So that's how I dealt with it, bro. And then since then, and here's the last piece I'll share was an interesting one which I've caught 2 weeks ago. So that was 5 months. First 3 weeks I was away doing that. Since then, I've spent 2 days a week at my dad's farm doing work, doing like, chop wood, carry water. We've been building stuff. Just working my hands with my dad, spending time with him on the land, phone off, just eating good food. So nature's a massive healer. Just get yourself in nature. Just sit in nature. Forest bathing, they call it. What I found though, bro, was that as soon as I got back, I started getting sort of more and more momentum building up into a sprint with work. And I was running. I wasn't running away from anything. Every time I felt emotions, I've been journaling since April. I started journaling almost every day, and I've got the whole track of our whole journey from when I didn't know if I was going to follow her to check. I was like, do I go to check and I follow her? Nah, my kingdom's here. I stay here. My queen will join my kingdom. This is where, if I want to do what I want to do, this is where I'm going to serve best, because I can't speak Czech. There's no community over there for this. So I was sprinting. Every time I'd feel something, I'd sit down, I'd feel it, allow it to come up, feel to heal 100%. But then when I wasn't, I was going. And what I realized a couple of weeks ago was I was doing that because I was trying to justify why I didn't follow her, why I'm not with her now, because I need to have something to prove as to what I've created, as to why I've chosen this over that, justifying it. And it is not necessary because I know it's all perfect. She actually needs to be on her own to find her own power, because I was me here, and I do my thing, and I've got a lot of strong practices, and I've been doing this stuff for a while, so I can be quite strong with people I'm around. And she needed to find that on her own. I can see that, and not everyone's the same, but that's her life journey, is to realize that she's got everything inside her. So I knew that I have to let her go to do that. So yeah, that's been the journey, brother.
Dude, it sounds like a very healthy way to deal with a very, very big challenge. I found that the smaller experiences of grief in comparison to what you've just been through, the most healthy thing I did was just I took a week away. I took Jessie up. We went up to the hills. This is after the death of a good friend of mine, and one of my grandparents, quite close to each other. And yeah, for me, I think what I could have done better was just switch a few more things off. But even the silence in the air that was up where we went up to a place called Red Hill here, and there's not a lot going up at Red Hill. We would watch a documentary here and there, and I would just go out, and I was doing a lot of running. I was running twice a day, just to help that I was running for a marathon. But in that silence of the running, I knew I was doing a lot of processing as well. Yeah. And it is interesting. I've got a good friend of mine who's very recently just lost his old man. He had brain cancer. And he was saying to me the other day, he's like, yeah, I know I'm struggling because I keep catching myself. He goes to sport. He's like, I can't stop researching sport. I know I'm burying my head in the sand a little bit. And I didn't say anything because it's I don't know what my role just yet is. And he's not at a stage where he's really asking questions or really looking at, I think I don't know what stage you would put him in, but I remember in that moment biting my tongue because I'm like, dude, you're doing the opposite of what you should be. I felt like that was my interpretation of what was going on. And from my experience, you nailed it with you got to feel to heal. That's where it's at. And that week that you spent up in the rainforest sounds amazing for the healing, but it also sounds like a nightmare in terms of the emotions that you got to try and walk through there, because just alone, as you were saying it, I was like, the fact that there was no music, no podcast, no whatever for that first week, it's there is so much pain in that space.
Mate, I would go for a 4-hour hike most days, and I would find myself literally speeding up to a jog, and because I'm like, I want to see how fast I can get to the end, see if I can get there faster than the other people on all trails. And I'd be like, dude, we're walking. we're walking slow. And slowly I just start walking faster, faster. And I'm like, let's go, let's go, let's go. Bro, I'm just trying to run away from things. But to your point, dude, how many times in my life I've done it that way? I've run, I've pushed it down, you know. Everyone is at a different point, and different things are different right at different times. I may well have another experience in my life in the future, and I'll do that. So, you know, time and place, right?
Yeah, man. Nah, dude. Well, I'm glad you're navigating it well, bro. You look good. You look healthy. You're still an inspiration, man. I love talking to people like you who have an appreciation for the power of the mind and just the mind's capacity to not just get you through like day-to-day struggles, but the big things like what you've been through, man. So it's like a little wake-up call to me. So, dude, thanks for coming back on, man. It was a really good chat. It's one of those ones we're talking for an hour and a half, and I'm sure we could talk for hours more, man. But we'll do another one again soon.
Mate, yeah, it's been such a pleasure to connect with you again, dude. And thank you to everyone for listening to Tyson here. Like, I love your perspective on things. I love the weaving that you get between humor and like real important topics, and how the way you see the world is very valuable. And mate, that flew by. Can't believe it.
Seriously. Thank you, brother.
Yeah,
All right, man. We'll
thank
leave
you,
it there.
brother.
I'll see you later. See
Awesome.
everybody.